Well, let me know if this is true for you in your sewing journey. So you probably picked up one of your first garments to sew and you've picked out a fabric. You've, cut out all of the paper patterns, and then you've cut out your fabric really carefully and accurately. Then you've sewn it all together, pressing and sewing, and it takes forever. And you get to the end and you put it on and you realize it's 2 sizes too big or too small. And you're just thinking, what a waste. I 100% know that feeling because it's happened to me too. In this video, we're going to talk about exactly all the tips I have for you on how to sew clothes that actually fit you to get through those hurdles so you don't waste your time and effort in making stuff that doesn't fit. In this video, I have my top tips that I've learned over my lifetime of sewing that you can sew clothes that fit you better. It is a journey, absolutely is a journey, but these things need to be on your radar so you don't waste your time, effort on non-fitting clothes. We're not doing that anymore. Welcome, dear sewing friends. It is delightful to see you here again. This is actually part 3 in a series of videos. If you didn't know already, we have on learning to actually sew clothes. So the first part was all about getting started sewing, like just your sewing machine and getting started. The second part 2, is like a phase that you go through, right? Phase 2 is when you start sewing your first garments and all of the assumed knowledge of sewing and just cutting through all that. Now you've sewn your first garment and it probably maybe didn't fit you as you'd hoped, and that is why we are here. This is the third phase, is how to look at what tips can you use, the information you need to start sewing clothes that actually fit you. This is part 3. If you are just actually meeting me for the first time, welcome. My name's Evelyn Wood. I'm the creator of VintageSewingSchool.com, and I've helped thousands of students learn how to sew. That is what I love doing, and it's what we are doing on this new year, new sewing journey together. If you've been enjoying this series and this content, and this is your jam like it is me, then I would be so grateful if you would subscribe. So do check down below, because YouTube likes to trick you sometimes and shows you videos, but you're not subscribed. It really does help my channel and helps me know what the videos that you like. So I would really appreciate it. How I'm going to list out these top tips is they kind of build on one another and it builds a story. I've made other videos in depth about some of these details, so don't worry if I sort of gloss over parts. This is sort of like a whole journey picture. Each of these are individual topics that you'll need to look further and learn, and it is a journey that we're on here. It is a skill that is built. If you didn't know, if no one told you yet already, sewing clothes is actually 2 skills. It is sewing and it is fitting, because we can't sew garments without them fitting. So no one really told me that when I was starting either. Something you learn along the way, and it is what it is. So I treat it differently. Sewing is one thing, like sewing good stuff, and pattern fitting is another one. It's another skill. It doesn't have to be difficult. You can do it easy and more advanced, and you definitely start easy, and what you do increases as your skill level increases. So always think about it, coming back to these basics, these videos, and building upon your skills of how to look at patterns and how to fit them, and all what we're about to talk about, and the juicy gossip. Because one of the biggest problems we face is patterns, is when we sew it up and it's like quite often 2 sizes too big or too small, right? So how do we get the best starting size for us and develop this as our skills develop? So one of the first mistakes we make is that, maybe you've already done this, is that the sizes on the pattern envelopes here mean nothing. So these numbers mean nothing. Maybe you've already made this mistake, but you think, I'm usually a size 12, so I'll just make up a size 12 pattern. And you do it and it fits terribly. It doesn't even fit at all, because the numbers in here that are just that. They are literally just numbers. They don't relate to the ready-to-wear sizes that we wear in the store. So what you wear in store has no relevancy to what we use in pattern making. They're different sizes, they're just numbers. There is no standard across manufacturers or brands either, so just from now on, you do not look at that number at all. All you go by is your body measurements, and using the body measurement chart here to help you decide on what size you need to cut out. And remember, the number, it is just a number. You can call it whatever number that you might need to. It doesn't mean big, small, medium, large, anything like that. It is just a number. The next thing we realize is that the suggested size that the manufacturer recommends, how big or small that garment might fit you. So how tight it might be that's their opinion. That's not how tight you want it to be or how loose you want it to be, right? So that's often a problem that we encounter, is because we're making maybe a 1950s dress and we want it nice and tight and fitted, but it's like way too big, right? Or vice versa. We want something nice and comfy and loose and it turns out really tight, even though we followed the directions on the packet. That's because they have decided how tight fitting that garment would be for us. And we're sewing our own clothes here. We want to take control of that and have that decision be our own. Now you're thinking, how do we do that? Well, the hidden reason that garments turn out differently than expected, is particularly when we start sewing, is this thing called ease. So what is ease? Ease is the extra room in a garment beyond our body measurements. So, for example, my dress right here, the garment size is bigger than my body size, right? This extra amount of fabric that this garment is, this is called ease. Ease is the difference between your body measurements, what your body is, and the finished garment measurements, how big the garment is when it's finished. That difference is called ease, and that is the hidden secret as to why garments are bigger or smaller. Now we need ease for a few different reasons. There's wearing ease or fitting ease, and this is because if like this dress was exactly my body measurements, I wouldn't be able to move at all, right? We'd never be able to lift our arms, we wouldn't be able to bend over. We need extra room for it to move and be comfortable, yeah? And the other reason we need ease is design ease. So think a big cowl neck, right? You know, one of those scoopy, drapey necklines, right? Or a big full, actually a big, like maybe an A-line fitted skirt, right? When we pull that skirt out, it's way bigger than our hip measurement, right? And that's because it's part of the design. So it's not for fit, it is the design. Like these gathers on my bodice here, this is part of the design. These shoulders, this is design ease if you're doing it. The sleeve is way bigger, but it's part of the design, right? It's all poofy and fluffy, and that's part of it. So there's those two elements why we have ease. The finished garment measurements are the key to choosing your best starting size out on the pattern. This is a little hidden secret. Maybe you're there already or you're just hearing about it for the first time. Unfortunately, it is not the measurements that most pattern companies give us, particularly the big four, these ones. You won't find it. You might find a finished back length or a back neck length on the pattern sometimes, which is useless. We want finished bust, waist, and hip to really be able to decide what pattern size we want, because then when we know what size the garment will be when it's finished, we can put that back against our body and we can then decide how big or small we want that garment to be on us and then choose a size accordingly. So I could choose this same dress and make it in a bigger size because I want it looser and a looser fit, right? This is one of the biggest mind blow type moments that particularly a lot of my students have at Vintage Sewing School. We take this step by step, and obviously how to find out your finished garment measurements is a big element of what I take people through in one of the core pattern foundation courses there. And so as you go through, not only being able to find the finished garment measurements on the pattern, which you can sometimes they're printed on the paper, sometimes they print them on the back. Indie patterns are really kind to you and often give you those measurements, but you can actually really learn to, what you want to do is to learn to measure the pattern pieces themselves and know what the finished garment measurements are. And as I take through my students this in Vintage Sewing School, it is mind-blowing key. It's when you have the most success, it's setting you up for the most success for you to tackle any pattern that you want to do after that when you learn those skills. So if you are interested in taking this further and learning that is what I do at Vintage Sewing School, of course, and I would love to have you in class there and help you through that sewing journey. I've left links down below for you to join and sign up as a full member. I'd love to have you there and really help you take it to the next level as well, because I want you to start making clothes that you actually want to wear outside in public. That's the key, right? All right, next is that there is a difference between size and fit. So size refers to size 10, size 12, size 14, 16, etc., right? A standard stock size. So it is the same design in just bigger or smaller. That is our size, and we need to pick the best starting size. And when we're very beginning, that's where we start. We just pick the most appropriate size. Fit is when we start shaping and molding the garment around us to suit our shape and style. And so this is when you take it to the next level. So you might start blending two sizes together, right? Maybe a smaller size at the waist, bigger size at the hips, or smaller at the hips and bigger at the bust, right? To suit your shape. Then you take that even further and start doing like full bust adjustments and sway back adjustments, and where we're tailoring and shaping. So it's really useful, and my students find a lot of success too when you start thinking about it in size is one element and then shaping and fitting is the other element. And look, this does take time, and this is why it's a progression of skills. First, you got to choose the best appropriate size. Then you start fitting and altering, and you get better and better and better. And you know, there is no end because you're always mastering that skill. Because just because we make it ourselves doesn't mean it's going to fit. I fell into this trap too, because you think if I make it myself, it's going to magically somehow fit. And then you realize, well, yeah, of course not. It's just like we buy stuff from the store. Things suit our body differently and our shape comes into play. And yeah, so just because we make it, it means we need to make it fit ourselves, right? That's what we're doing here. Let's dive a little deeper into shape, because fitting is not just across the body, it's also lengthwise. So we got bust, waist, and hip, and we can kind of know if we're smaller in the waist, bigger in the hips, that sort of thing. Learn your shape, but also it comes into lengths. So we mean shoulder to bust point, right? This means a shoulder to bust point length, this length here. A bust point to waist, this length in here, and a waist to hip length. These all play a really big part in the pattern and how it fits you. For example, I have quite a long chest, you know, my shoulder to bust and then bust to waist, like shoulder to here, is quite long. So all patterns tend to not fit me. Most waisted dresses I might even find from the store, and it's no different in a pattern that I get. The waist is not at the waist, it's like halfway between under my bust and my waist because I'm very long, so I need to adjust the pattern lengthwise. And so I've heard countless stories from students of like mind-blowing moments when they realize they need to actually add length too. They can do all day on the width, but it's lengthwise is fitting as well. And that is part of learning your shape, because the better you learn your shape, the better you can use your shape to your advantage. This is like a hidden secret that no one's talking about, right? I never heard it before, and when I tell it to my students, they're just like, it makes so much sense to use your shape to your advantage in fitting. So I'll start with an example. When I was starting sewing, I would never, and I still can't, I'd never found a pencil skirt that ever fit me off the rack, right? Never ever. The waist would always be too big because I've got a smaller waist, so the waist was too big, and the hips would always be too tight. They would never fit me. So I would never fit because I'm quite curvy, right? And so I started sewing, and of course I wanted to sew all the things that I couldn't buy off the rack, and I would buy a pencil skirt pattern and try and sew it up, and of course it didn't fit me, and it's so hard to fit because it was the opposite to my body shape. When I started sewing an A-line skirt, which is the shape that I would normally buy off the rack, because then it sort of fit me as a pencil skirt, I didn't have to fit it at all. I would just have to fit it to my waist, and naturally that skirt, being A-line rather than straight, A-line has more natural ease, remember we just talked about this, for design ease in the hip than a pencil skirt, and it would just fit me, and I didn't have to do all of these complicated alterations, particularly as a beginner when you don't know how to do all those complicated alterations. Using patterns to your advantage, like finding patterns with design ease and styles of garments that fit you, that have different areas that you probably already find that you normally wear because they fit your body shape. Find patterns in those same shapes to start with, because you won't have to fit overly complicated garments. When you don't have those skills, you don't want to overcomplicate your sewing journey. One thing at a time. Learn sewing first. Like you learn your sewing machine, then learn sewing, then you learn pattern fitting, then you learn to pick your best size, and then you learn fitting, and then you do all the different types of little fits, and you just build and build and build, right? You don't start up here. Don't start painting the Mona Lisa first. You're not going to make this beautiful ball gown that fits you perfectly on your first garment. It's just not going to happen. We build up to it. And the biggest tip and realization I had is that patterns are just the starting point. They are meant to be customized and changed and altered to be to fit you properly, and both your body shape and your style as well. That is how they were designed and meant to be. Remember, we talked about in the last video that patterns were designed for home dressmakers to have the new latest fashion, the style that they wanted, and they would always fit and change and alter them to be what they wanted. And that is how patterns are designed. I know that's what I wanted for my sewing journey, and I bet that is why you're here, because you also envision that for your sewing journey too, and you absolutely can get there. It does just take time, and it is about learning all of these principles, these foundations, and building your skills slowly, slowly, slowly. And you'll do it way quicker than I did, because we're here having this conversation and no one had this conversation with me when I first started. So you already know, I think, to go and be able to choose a much better size now. This is what I do at Vintage Sewing School, as I said, and I am actually super excited because I'm teaching something brand new there, and I would love to have you join me there if you're ready to continue this journey, because patterns, as we said, are meant to be customized. And so what I do and what I specialize in is helping you be able to learn both sewing and pattern designing and fitting at the same time, and integrating that together so that you can learn to create the clothes that you really dream of, just uniquely for you, because that's what I wanted, and I know you do too. Okay, your homework for this video though, if you haven't already, identify what pattern areas here, what are the things that you're really missing out on that you hadn't learned, particularly the body measurements and ease. I think it's going to be most of them. Write them down below in the comments, which ones, which are your biggest aha moments as well, because I'd love to hear it. Your homework is to go and study those, watch more videos, learn about them. It's in the description box below, because every bit you do will enhance and just get better and better and better and better each time you do it. All right. Happy sewing, my friends. Bye.